What keyword ranking strategies are you currently using? The entire goal for ranking is how many orders can we possibly get through that one specific search term. Now, I know there's a lot of talk in our space around like, oh, target like long tail search variations of the keyword and all that stuff. That does help. It's not going to have the most impact. So the most impact for any ranking keyword is going to be getting orders specifically through that search, getting a lot of orders. So we don't just want one, we want a lot. And also making sure that our click-through rate and our conversion rate are really high on those key terms. So I'll be honest with you, the biggest impact on ranking you can have is really by picking the right keywords. So if your question was, how do I figure out what keywords do I rank on? I would say like look for things that you can afford to spend a lot, i.e. you're not losing money, meaning ACoS isn't like so crazy high that you can't afford it. You want to look for things that you have really good conversion rates. Bonus points if you have good click-through rates here, but I would go for conversion rates over click-through rates. And then you just want to like put money towards that. Now, if you say, how do I rank on this specific keyword, then that question is a little bit different. And I'm just going to tell you like push volume. Now, what I recognize is that me saying, hey, push volume through a one specific search might mean that that's not super profitable. So that's where I'm saying like the real trick is going to lie in the actual targets that you select to rank on. Other things, some pro tips and some pro hacks are more advanced but can be helpful here, is if you have a specific search where it's like crazy expensive and you just don't really have the budget for it. Again, that goes back to keyword selection. Make sure you're selecting keywords where you can afford to spend that budget on it. But if we're on a specific keyword, you want to make sure that you're showing high enough in search that you can really get those good conversions and get those eyeballs on the product. But maybe you can't afford a ton of clicks because there's a lot of clicks and they're really expensive. And use the budget as sort of a lever to cap or meter how much money you are spending for that ranking play. Now, how effective that is going to be how many orders your market is making, and that's relative. So when I talk about trying to get a large amount of orders, it's relative to the other competition that is on that particular search page.
Hello, and welcome back to another episode of Ask Junglr. This is the time and the place for you to get answers to your most pressing Amazon advertising questions. So, hey, my name is Elizabeth Greene. If this is your first time joining in, I want to give you a big welcome to this show, and also just kind of let you know how it works here and how you can leverage this Q&A, this hour session of Q&A, to be able to improve your Amazon advertising. So, quick intros again. So, I'm Elizabeth Greene, co-founder of Junglr. We run what we call business-centric ad strategies. So highly data-driven, but I like to break things down here. Like, what does a business ad strategy mean? Like, what does it mean to be data-driven? Like, what are the nuts and the bolts and the real language? So when I say business-centric ad strategy, what I mean is you want to be making profits. Let's be honest, right? We're all in business to make money. And so by running business-centric ad strategies, that means like, what does the brand need? What does the business need right now? Do we need to accelerate sales? Like we just got an email from a client this morning. We're like, hey, we're dealing with overstock issues on this product. We need to be able to push this product, right? Business-centric ad strategy. What are we doing to kind of combat that? Or if inventory is running low, like what are we doing to combat that with ads? Have we adjusted ads for that? Or profitability is slimmer on this particular product. How do we make sure that we're running a little bit more strategic advertising? Like we need to be more careful what we're doing with this specific product because our profitability just isn't as good here. Or some of our clients, like, what about high return rates and how that affects profitability on a product? I can't tell you how many times I've seen a really low ACoS, really low total ACoS, and a crazy high return rates, which again, if all you're looking at is just the advertising and the advertising performance, which in 2026, you gotta be looking at more than just ad console. And honestly, you gotta be looking at more than just total ACoS per product as well. If you want to run, again, more effective, more efficient, and more strategic advertising. So like that is the world in which we're playing in, and that is a world in which we are running ad accounts and developing ad strategies along with all the new crazy features, AMC ads, sponsored products video ads, like all the analysis, all the things, AI, like video tools, like crazy world we live in, right? And it's getting more competitive. Cost per clicks are going up. I hate that. Analyzing a brand today was like, hey, what happened like this year versus last year? What's going on? What went on is cost per clicks went like at least 10 cents higher than they had been historically last year. That's the world we live in. So those are the world in which we are trying to just get a handle on everything. So this is the time and the place again for you to get answers to your Amazon ad questions. What you can do is whatever streaming platform you are listening in on, drop your questions into the chat. I will pull them up and I will give you the best answers possible. These are the best answers you're going to find anywhere on the web. I'm going to make that bold claim on how to run more effective and efficient Amazon advertising. With that, we have some people jumping in to say hi. Really, really appreciate it. And all right, our first question is I have a set $100 a day budget for this campaign, but it's spending around $200. How do I control this? The setting says spending up to 25% more than the average daily. Yeah, so that I would check to see if there are other features. There's one other features if you have it in a portfolio. Yeah, if you have it in a portfolio, your campaign budget should be able to, you said I have a $100 daily budget for this campaign. So I'm assuming that's set at a campaign level. I would want to go through and I would want to check the specific campaign settings. There are some campaign settings that allow Amazon to increase budgets depending on performance. You want to double check that. And let me go into it. Actually, let me like dig up an ad account and go into a campaign right now. And let me like go through and kind of see. There's another one that if you have it in a specific portfolio, there are rule settings on a portfolio level, and I'm going to look at those right now. If you go into again a specific portfolio, if you click modify the portfolio, by default I'm noting this is checked now. And let me see if I can blur this one. Let me show you what this looks like. All right. Yeah, so if you go into your specific portfolio, so click on a portfolio, go to the settings, so click on the settings on that portfolio. There's this new option in here that is unspent campaign budgets. So what it says is share unspent campaign budgets with other campaigns in this portfolio that have already spent their full budget. So that might also be playing into, there's a whole bunch of like tricky things, to be honest, in here that can set that. Again, the settings. So if you are not aware, there's something in settings where if you go into, again, your ad account, you go into settings, and I can zoom in here for those of you who may not be able to see. You can, there's like a daily budget cap, which you can set, or you can set to use campaign level budgets. And you said for this specific campaign. So I'm not sure if you are talking about, like if you're, it depends on how your budget's set up, like if you're using campaign level budgets. But here, if you're using a daily budget cap, it says, your amount you're willing to spend for your campaigns each day. If the campaign spends less than your daily budget, the unspent amount can be used to increase your daily budget. This is the daily budget cap, up to 25% on other days in the calendar month. So basically what happens is they take this budget and we say, okay, if it's a calendar month of, February is a little bit weird. Let's say on average, we have like a 30-day. So it would be like $180. And then they would multiply that times 30. And they go, okay, we have, $5,400 to spend throughout the month. And then if for one day we spend, like $120, there's like, oh, we have another $50 to sprinkle throughout the month. So there's that can affect, but the campaign budget themselves, like if you have if you're able to set, like, put another gosh, I cannot speak today, a comment in the comment section to clarify, are you meaning the total account or are you meaning like a specific campaign? Because if it's a specific campaign, that campaign should still run out of budget if it reaches its budget cap. Unless, and I'm looking at a campaign here, like unless you've set it up, again, unless the portfolio thing is checked, in which case all bets are off and you could start spending, or unless you have a budget rule added. So it is possible to have a budget rule added, which says if your campaign is meeting a certain criteria within a certain date range, it's been a hot minute since we set those up. We have our own budget rule things that could be going on as well. So there's quite a few little tricky things within the account that may be affecting how budgets are split. So I would definitely say I would check every single little tick box because there's some fun ones popping up that definitely can spread the budget. This is a fantastic question. What percentage of ad spend should go towards DSP? That is a fantastic question. I would say, like, on average, I've heard numbers, just, if you're throwing out percentage averages, 10 to 20-ish, give or take. That's not our preference in terms of building budgets. So there's two ways to build a budget. One is just saying, hey, what percentage are we cool with spending? That's helpful to get a brand's gauge on like how much extra budget you can afford. But our preference personally on building out recommendations for budgets, this one takes more legwork. It's not as easy as telling a brand, hey, we need 10 to 20% of like your total budget. However, what we can do, and this is what we do, we actually, whenever one of our brands is interested in running DSP, we will preload the work that goes into putting together the ad strategy. So what does that even mean? What we'll do is we'll look at the catalog and we will identify the products that we feel are really strong and we should be running DSP on it. And then you can build, I forget what it's called. It's like you could build the ad strategies, I believe. But there is ways Amazon gives you the ability to put in certain audiences that you want to go after, and it will actually calculate the size of the audience and it will give you the budgets that you need to go after like a certain percentage of that specific audience, which means, again, we have to figure out the audiences ahead of time. We have to do that analysis. We got to do the product. So it's not as easy as like, hey, brand, I think we should get 10K a month for this, right? But what that does allow us to do is say, okay, this is how much we think we can get. Because there's sometimes where a brand would be like, hey, can we just like throw $3,000 at DSP? And I want to advertise all the like, so if I'm like, all right, I have $3,000 with DSP. Which products am I advertising? Which audiences can I go after? And what you'll find is that sometimes, depending on the size of the audience and the expense to go after it, you're just not going to be getting the bang for your buck that is needed if you don't have enough budget. So that's our preference in building out budgets. Which, by the way, if you don't have access to DSP and you would like someone to take a look, and DSP right now is not quite self-serve. It's coming, but you're still going to need to be able to get access to it through somebody. So if you're interested in a DSP, anyone listening in, if anyone would like to get an idea of if it even makes sense for them to run DSP, feel free to reach out to us on our website. If you go to the website, it says get your Amazon ads audit, but you can set up a call. I'll be on these calls. And when you book the call, there's way like, how can we help you? Just feel free to just write in like, hey, Liz said something about DSP and I was interested in like if my brand's even ready for that. Because you do have to be ready for that. All right, other questions popping in. I have quite old campaigns, but I no longer am satisfied with them. What is the best strategy right now? Should I set up new campaigns? And how should I prepare that structure? How many keywords max should I have in each campaign? Some say we should have one campaign for each keyword. My question would be like, why are you dissatisfied with them? Is it a performance issue? Is it, or just, I don't feel like the strategy is correct? Or I don't feel like it's as good as it could be in terms of the structure? That would be my question. If it's just because I feel like this should be cleaner, I wouldn't worry about it. Now, if it's a performance issue, then I would say absolutely. But okay. So the question is, ACoS is higher, initial strategy is not set up correctly. Okay. I would argue it might be the initial strategy, but it may not necessarily be the structure that's hurting your ACoS. There's something in terms of performance that's dragging it down. So I would want to know why. So there's kind of two things. Oftentimes when we talk about ACoS, we're like, okay, so ACoS is too high. What do I do about it? I would want to know, is it a conversion rate issue? Meaning it's taking me a crap ton more clicks than I need to generate a sale? Or is it just the CPCs are too high? And then the question is why? So when you're looking at, say, a campaign setup, by the way, the question, do you need to have like one campaign for each keyword? No, you don't. That's way too intense. I like single keyword campaigns only for aggressive ranking keywords that have a lot of volume, meaning like a lot of search volume, probably is around the 10,000 or more search volume, if I had to give you a rule of thumb. But that's kind of just some number I pulled out, though. Full disclosure there. But I would say, I think the question is, what is underperforming? Is it a high CPCs? Is it a low conversion rate? And then what is actually being targeted? So let's say you had a bunch of campaigns and you're like, these are not performing. There's high ACoS, and it had like phrase match in there and broad match and exact match, and everything was like all lumped together. Okay, so what's that happens there is I'm kind of playing whack-a-mole with all these different search terms, and I got this whole bid thing, and it's like this huge thing that's just kind of like spinning out of control. There, I would say that this initial strategy is not set up correctly. Meaning, strategy and campaign structure has more to do with the amount of things that I can control versus something that doesn't work. Because I have seen time and time again in older accounts where they were kind of set up with the old school method of just like throwing all the different match types in there and like all the different products, and it's like this crazy ball of like just mess, to be honest. Sometimes those perform actually better than segmented campaigns. So I would argue it's not necessarily an issue of that the poor structure is creating the poor ACoS that you have. The real issue is that the poor structure is probably making it so you don't have as many options when it comes to optimizing. And so going back to no longer satisfied, what's the best strategy right now? Should I set up new campaigns? I would go through, typically our strategy is to go through the older campaigns, look at lifetime. Is there anything that's still kind of in the testing phase? Is there anything that has never gotten an order on it at all? You can just look at lifetime, and then you could just straight up pause those. So that just immediately just like clears up a ton of stuff. I would also go through and look at everything that, like all the search terms, and what kind of negatives can we add to this. And I'm just like pairing off, cleaning up. In terms of launching new campaigns, I'm a fan of, single campaign, single ad group. I don't like multiple ad groups. There's things that gets introduced with that. And then we will often, or we always do only one match type per campaign. And then in terms of number of keywords, typically speaking, we've been sticking to about 5-ish. If they're really low volume keywords and you intentionally are going to keep the bids low, like if it's a low bid strategy, then you might end up with like a lot more keywords. But generally speaking, a rough rule of thumb about 5. And then if it is a high volume keyword that is exact match, you can do like a single keyword campaign on that. My thing was I would launch the new campaigns and I would run the new campaigns and the old campaigns kind of in parallel at the same time. And I would slowly dial back bids and potentially budgets on the old structure. And I would see if I can get the impressions to shift to the new structure and just slowly turn down the dial of one and turn up the dial of others. Because what we find, you don't want to turn it off and turn it back on. That's really not good strategy. What I would do is I would identify the things that you want a tight control over, and then I would launch those campaigns first, and then I would launch the new campaigns in batches. You don't want to launch like a ton of new campaigns in the beginning and then try and like switch it. Like it's gonna be a madhouse. You just want to launch a couple campaigns, see if you can get them to get traction, launch a couple more, and then optimize the other ones. But I would be careful and make sure that like you want to make sure you're not overcorrecting for something that's maybe either a listing or just a market competition issue as well. As for the CPC, should I go for Amazon's recommendation or slightly lower, slightly higher? It depends on how aggressive you want to be. So for the starting bids or Amazon suggested bids is not a bad starting bids. There's 2 ways to do it. Either you can go crazy aggressive with the bids in the beginning to try and get traction. And then as you start getting clicks, you'll probably have to slowly dial it back. Or there's the other way to do it, which is to start lower bids and then work your way up. We like increasing bids. It's like 3 cents every single day until we start gaining impressions is typically our rule of thumb. Now, which one you choose depends on 2 things. Either you need to have like, so going really high, the account is either you recognize that like ACoS is just going to be crazy high in the beginning, you're going to double it down, and you probably have a lot of budget to throw at it. So and I'm saying, hey, I'm willing to pay for getting the data faster. Paying meaning I'm going to have to spend more initially, and also performance is not going to be as good, and I can afford that. Versus on the flip side, if you start low and you work your way up, benefit is you could start with lower spend. Sometimes in the beginning you launch it and you don't get any impressions, and that's to be expected. Again, that's why we increase daily. And then also I'm just going to take me a while to get the data. Like it's going to take time. So for some brands, when they launch products, like example being, we launched a product for a brand, they're doing very aggressive discounting price, but they're only doing that aggressive discount on price for like a week. It's really, then they have a whole staggered playbook of when they're going to be increasing pricing. So our timelines were like really short, and they also have a lot of really good products. They have a really strong brand, and so we went really aggressive out of the gate. It's also a supplement category, so CPCs are freaking crazy. But I mean, honestly, it's doing really well. Like total ACoS is already like at 12%. So I mean, strong brand, but like we had to pedal to the metal, all hands on deck, floor it. Right, with that launch, because again, we're running against the clock of the pricing, and we really just need to get it out there. Versus another brand, maybe they just don't have as much budget to throw at it. They're a little bit more profit conscious right now, and so in that case, we choose the other strategy. So it really depends on the brand. Another one, should I pause the campaigns for night hours after 10 p.m., 6 p.m.? I see a lot of clicks without any sales. That's irritating. Question on clicks without sales. How are you determining you're getting clicks without sales? Like, have you run the analysis? I just recorded this morning. I wish it was out already. Although you're watching on YouTube, so pay attention to the channel. Maybe I'll tell the team to get this video out sooner rather than later. I just recorded a video on how to use sponsored products campaign report and run a pivot table to determine if you should do day parting or not. So that is the question. If you have the data to validate, and when I say data, I don't mean just like looking at the account and being like, oh, I don't see any orders this hour. I mean looking specifically at the data to determine if you should be, if you don't get sales. And then also, I want to pull up another report actually, because this is another one that we really like. AMC gives us a wealth of information. And we really, I mean, there's two factors here. Okay, let me share with you. Hold on. Okay, sweet. Sorry, I'm like trying to like blur specific stuff. Okay. Let me share this because there's two things here. Okay, there's the like, did they purchase right now, or are they purchasing later? So the sponsored products campaign report, and again, I just filmed a whole video today on how to use it and look at pivot tables, etc. But you can also look now. This is a software analytics tool that we call, or that we've been using for the past 2 years. It's called KPOC. It's amazing. Really like their software. I don't even think I have an affiliate code, but I think they give you a deal if you reach out and say that we sent you or something. But here, if you look at it, there's two factors here. One, you can see, is anyone making a purchase right now? Again, from 10 p.m. till 6 a.m. However, there's another factor of how do consumers behave in your specific category? And so this is a nice graph. If you have access to AMC, which again, we set up AMC data for every single one of our brands, and this has been really amazing in terms of analysis. But the one is the time to conversion. Again, you can pull a report in your account if you have access to AMC. I probably should film a video on how to do that as well. But if you think about it, so right here, most of purchases happen within a 10-minute period. And if we go up to here, cumulative purchases, about 76% of shoppers on this brand purchase within a 1 hour period. Which means if we're doing day parting, and we know that 76% of our shoppers, like if we're day parting for hours, and we can note that there's specific hours, KPOC actually has some really fantastic reporting we can pull. That even gives us like heat maps and stuff for day parting purposes, and we can analyze that. I digress. Okay, so if I have a brand like this, where I would say like, okay, 76% of purchases happen within the first hour, then if I have a specific hour where I'm noting that purchases are not happening, well, okay, great. I can be pretty confident in pausing things. But notice here, there's actually an uptick on window shoppers and purchases that happen within 1 to 7 days. So again, this is somebody is like 1 to 2 hours. We have a little bit more people who are doing 2 to 12 hours, 12 to 24 hours. And then there's an uptick of shoppers who come back between 1 to 7 days of purchasing. Which means if let's say that those shoppers are browsing my product or browse and find my product between the hours of 10 p.m. and 6 a.m. And so if I'm looking at conversions that happen on that specific hour, well, I'm going to assume, okay, well, nobody's purchasing. But you also have to pay attention to the fact that here you could see, 11% of our purchases happen between a 1 to 7 day window later. Again, it's 11%. It's not the majority, but you would also want to, again, factor that into your analysis. So it's not only, again, you can use a sponsored product campaign report breakdown by hour to do an analysis on like what times of day do I have a strong enough conversion rate, where do the majority of my sales happen, and I can make a general guess. But again, you also want to be very careful. Like I've audited some brands where the majority of their sales happen later, especially for like higher priced items. A lot of times there's a really long decision window for those brands. And so you need to be very, very careful that you're not like overcorrecting for something, if that makes sense. So my answer to you is make sure that you look at the data to determine that it actually makes sense. That's what it means when it's like people talk like make data-driven decisions. That's exactly it. Like look at the information when you are looking at any decision. It's what am I assuming to figure it out, or what data points, or what do I need to look at to be certain that this is a good move in my specific account. And if you can validate that, then yeah, by all means. But I would highly, highly caution against making any decision without actually doing an analysis. All right. I have a couple more questions. So again, if anyone has any questions, I'll do a reset. If this is your first time joining in, welcome. The format of this is you can drop your Amazon ad question into the chat on whatever streaming platform you are listening in on. I will pull it up. I will get answers to your questions. We've been here for a little over 30 minutes at this point. I've got a little bit of extra time, or not a little bit extra time. We got time. Although it is a first come first serve, I have had people who've dropped a question like at the end, right as I'm signing on off, and I'm like, oh, I'm so sorry. Hopefully you can ask the question a little bit sooner next time. So just an FYI, if a question does come up, I do highly recommend, again, dropping it sooner rather than later. I am getting a lot of questions though, so sometimes I kind of like pull certain brands, or I'll get questions. So one of the ones that I'm getting a lot, is what keyword ranking strategies are you using right now? And so there's quite a few brands that we are, obviously basically all of our brands, we have some sort of ranking strategies going on, and we also have some launches that are going on right now, some more aggressive launches. And so what I would say in terms of keyword ranking strategies is it's still a single keyword. So either one keyword, sometimes we'll put up to 3 keywords. I wouldn't do any more than 5 keywords. Again, it depends on the budget and how much control we need over it. If we have more than, I would say, 10,000 searches or more, we tend to do single keyword campaigns for those. So it's single keyword campaigns, exact match. The main thing that I have seen is you want to make sure you are specific to the product. Case in point, like we have a launch we're doing right now with a specific brand, and it's kind of more like it could be considered like a collagen supplement, but it's a collagen supplement. It's more specifically geared towards women, and it's a drink powder, and it also has some other additives. So in that case, we're not going after collagen powder. That is a really expensive keyword. Maybe at some point we'll get to that. But right now we're going much more specific, much more narrow in on that very strategic audience, and it's performing really well. We're seeing sales increase, and we're seeing rankings increase, and it's working. So I would say a couple of things. One, again, get really specific to the searches that you're going after. Make sure you are tracking to see if the rank is actually improving. A lot of times, you got to validate that something is actually moving up in rankings, because if not, like, why are you spending on it? And then the third thing I would say is we leverage exact match mainly for those things. other questions I had around match types, which again, if you're joining in, feel free to drop an Amazon advertising question into the chat. I'll pull it up and we can get into it. But we'll get to these other questions that I got throughout the week. One of the questions was, did I use exact, phrase, and broad, and how do I structure it? We like to structure, so I'm a fan of using all the match types. Although my team has been dabbling in only using exact and broad match. I have a soft spot for phrase match. I really do like phrase match, but the team has tried it with like mixed. I mean, some stuff has been covered with broad match. So I would say exact match, these are our ranking strategies. And if they're not a ranking strategy, we'll group, say a group of keywords. We prefer to launch these in single ad group campaigns and one campaign for each individual ad group. And then in terms of how do you structure it, so that's kind of the structure, roughly about 5 keywords per campaign. And then also we make sure that we're staggering bids. This is a huge one. We don't like to be aggressive with things with broad match or sometimes phrase match category targeting. So crazy. I'm auditing a brand right now and they are struggling because their total ACoS is like gone through the roof. It's insane. I was looking at the numbers like year over year and month over month, and I'm like, this is bananas. When I am going through and I'm auditing it, at the top of all of their targeting. So this is the easiest thing, by the way. Go into the targeting tab, sort last 30 days, highest to lowest in terms of spend. Look at what the targeting type is and look at the ACoS performance of that. I can't tell you how many freaking times I do that. And it's so obvious that you're like way overspending on super broad targets and the bids are crazy. Like the bids on broad match in this specific campaign at like a 50% ACoS, a 40% ACoS, and the targets for ACoS are really low in this account. They're spending like $4 a click on some things. I saw some campaigns how they were more strategically set up at $10 bids on broad match. It's like crazy. I'm like, no wonder you guys are just bleeding money left and right. And I was looking at I actually sent an email. I was like, what's your criteria for adding negatives? Like they're thinking they need an entire restructure to the account. And again, I'm still kind of going through the audit, but it's just really a lot of leakage happening everywhere, a lot of inefficiencies. There's so many times where I find that brands feel like it's like, oh, our structure isn't right. If we could just get the campaign structure right. And then you go and look at it, you're like, it's the strategy and how you're going about how aggressive you're being on things that can just easily spin out of control. Like a lot of times brands feel like they're missing this, oh, I'm not running AMC, or my campaign structure isn't correct, or this is happening or that is happening. And it's like, actually, it's just kind of the fundamentals of not putting $10 bids on auto campaigns. Like that should be kind of obvious, but here we are, right? So that's kind of what I have come to. Again, if you are listening in and you have any Amazon ad questions, feel free to drop them in the chat. Otherwise, I'm going to go through all the questions that I have gotten this week. One of the other questions I got is, if I have clicks below conversion, how do I fix it? And this is a fantastic question. I would say, although the answer is probably not what you want to hear most of the time, I will give you the most of the time answer, and then I'll give you like the little tweaks that maybe you can think about fixing it. So low conversions typically means like there's a mismatch in what the consumers are looking for when they search that particular keyword and then what your offer is. So oftentimes it's a product market fit issue, or more specifically like a product keyword fit issue. So a lot of times it's going through and finding better search pages that the product can compete on. Another one I would look at though is I would want to look at the placement percentages. So like, where am I showing up on the platform? Do I have a lot of impressions? Sometimes if you just don't have enough impressions, you like don't really have enough data to really figure this out. And then the other thing that I would want to look at is, what is the match type? So if this is a, like ranking keyword and I have low conversions, it's either I got to go find targets that have better conversions on, or oftentimes it's I need to make adjustments to the listing. Maybe it's like a main image or the image stack. Main image stack, specifically first 3 images, but obviously like all the other images in the stack. That is the most important thing that you could possibly focus on for conversion rate issues. Again, SEO, great. Title optimization, great. Star ratings and price point are another 2 ones that are really big for conversion rate optimization. Those ones are a little bit less out of your control, though. You can optimize the crap out of images. But I digress. Where was I going? So there's that you can do on the listing side, but on the advertising side, oftentimes it's like just finding better targets. Although if it is a broad match, or it depends on the targeting type, if it's a targeting type that can pull additional searches or a lot of variations of search, I would want to go look at the search terms tab inside of ad consoles to say like, where am I showing up? And oftentimes what you'll find is if you have really low conversion rates, there's some search terms that are popping up that are bringing down the performance of that campaign or that keyword. And so in that case, you can like add those as negatives, and oftentimes that could help with the conversion rates as well. Obviously, that only applies if they're more broader keywords, but you can try and focus on that again if it's low conversion rates there. Hey Elizabeth, how do you recommend split testing? Currently using managed experiments, but data comes in slowly. Don't trust that it's even accurate. Yeah, that's the best way. Like that's really the only way to split test. I know that for a lot of the larger agencies that do creative optimization. So for full context, we simply partner with or we refer our brands out to trusted partners. We don't manage like the creatives in-house, but the best of the best who do creative management, I know, I talk with them all the time. They're good friends. They always do a poll split test. So I know some of them are out there are PickFu, Product Opinion, I believe IntelliView is another one, where you can do poll head-to-heads with your with the images, just to see which one does the audience, and there you'll get your results in within matters of minutes. The max would be a couple hours. And then what they do is they design. A lot of times what happens is brands will only design one main image. You want to do more than that. I was listening to one of the creatives and they're like, look, we make 10 different main image ideas, and then we simply run a poll to see which one appeals to the audience best. And so they have a bunch of images, see which ones works. They're running polls, and then they take the best of the best, and then they run that as a split test against their main image, and then rinse and repeat, keep going. So if Amazon Managed Experiments is the best way to do split testing, actual split testing, polls are good, but they're not going to be as specific or as accurate as managed experiments. But then the trade-off, of course, is the really long time. So what you do is you use polling software to be able to get the information really quickly. Why does the audience like this? You'll get a lot of good ideas strictly from the comments that you get on the images you create. So run that, figure out what works, best of the best, split test it against your main image that's existing using managed experiments. Because if you had a ton of ideas and then you only use those in managed experiments, it's going to take you I know managed experiments takes a long time. It's going to take you a really long time to even know which of all of those works. What can cause a historically strong campaign to lose performance? The example of a single keyword campaign, some of mine have stopped working, so I made a new campaign exactly the same, and the new one works. Sometimes it just happens. Oftentimes it's some changes to the product. So if all of a sudden the product conversion rate decreases, sometimes if you decrease the budgets a lot and then like increase budgets, or if you've been changing bids a lot, like let's say historically you always had high bids and then you jack the bids down and then you try and jack them back up, or if you had high placement percentages and you completely remove all the placement percentages and then put them back. I've seen that. Actually, I've seen a lot of like really large swings in placement percentages really jack up the performance of the campaigns. What else have I seen? I think that's the main thing. Obviously, you said it was exact match, so I'm assuming this isn't the case. But, if there was like a broad or a phrase or an auto campaign, we've seen some instances where like a negative keyword got added and then all of a sudden the performance there, you should be able to look at the performance history and then use the history tab to determine like, oh yeah, this keyword got added as negative, and you can starkly see like when performance started to go down, then you just remove the negative. We've caught that a couple times. It doesn't happen often because we're pretty careful with how we adjust for negatives. There's a human element feedback loop in that because we don't believe in like fully. I've seen really bad things happen when you fully automate that. But it is important to just like, again, you're always scanning for anomalies and issues. And so that would be it. So actually, what I would recommend doing is going into the history tab of that campaign. So I would look at a zoomed out graph, like what has historically been the performance of the campaign. Is there a way you can kind of pinpoint when the campaign performance started to go down? And then if you can, then I would just like look on the graph, like what happened. Sometimes it's that like a product ran out of inventory, and then when it comes back into inventory, it's not exactly the same. So I think looking at the history tab should probably give you a much better idea. But those are the things historically I've seen can sometimes cause campaigns to not perform as well as they did before, which totally sucks. But I'm glad that you've been able to make a new campaign and that it has been able to work. Sometimes that just happens. There's Amazon ads can be kind of quirky. So I think as long as you're like making smart decisions and paying attention, like you should probably be good. All right, let me see if we had any other questions. I see a couple more people had joined. So by the way, if you have any questions, Amazon ad questions that you wanted to pop up, feel free to drop those into the chat. I will pull them up and we'll get answers. There's been some amazing questions this week. If we don't have any more questions, then we might skate out of here, even if it's a couple minutes early. But this has been absolutely fabulous. I appreciate everybody's Q&A. You guys are always super awesome. Really hope you guys are able to get actionable insights from this weekly Q&A session so you guys can run more effective ads and really just be able to go into 2026 with being able to run ads to grow your brands without having to sacrifice profits, because that is always the absolute hard part. So with that, I do believe I shall call it here. And thanks so much, guys. You have been awesome, and I will catch you in the next.
And that wraps up this episode of the Ask Junglr Amazon Advertising Podcast. I hope you found these insights and strategies helpful in your Amazon PPC journey. Remember, if you have a burning Amazon ad question that you'd like answers to, head over to junglr.com/live to join our next live Q&A session. Until next time, keep optimizing those ads and stay hungry.